I created a travel software that turned our failing company into a $400 million business in just 1 year. But suddenly, on my sister's birthday, my father gave the entire company to her. When I confronted him, he laughed in my face and handed me a $1 bill, saying, "This is your true worth." I walked away in silence. But the next morning, when they arrived at work, their arrogant expressions turned to sheer panic. I didn't have to say a word. I simply clicked a button and let reality speak for itself. At that moment, they realized they had made an irreversible mistake. My name is Lucas Mitchell, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes family can be your worst enemy, especially in business. For 10 years, I poured my heart and soul into our small family-owned tech company, transforming it from a struggling startup into a multi-million-dollar empire. But success has a cruel way of revealing the worst in people, even those who are supposed to support you. I remember how it all started, back when our business was just a small computer repair shop in a strip mall, barely staying afloat. My father founded the company 20 years ago, and despite the struggles, it was his pride and joy. My sister, Laura, was always the golden child, straight A student, elite business school graduate, our father's favorite. Meanwhile, I was the quiet son, the one who spent his days in the shop fixing computers while studying computer science at a local college. "Lucas, you're wasting your potential here," Laura would say whenever she came home for the holidays. "You should aim higher." But I saw something in that tiny shop that no one else did: potential. While Laura studied theoretical business models, I was learning how the real world worked. I was coding, fixing systems, identifying market gaps no one else was noticing. In my final year of college, I developed our first proprietary software, a simple yet effective inventory management tool for small businesses. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was affordable, easy to use, and solved a real problem. At first, my father was skeptical. But when local businesses started buying licenses, his attitude changed. "Maybe you're onto something, kid," he said, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of pride in his eyes. That moment meant everything to me. If only I had known how short-lived it would be. Under my leadership, the company started to grow. I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week, investing everything I had into our success. Meanwhile, Laura was climbing the corporate ladder. At a major consulting firm in New York, I was building something real. Our small repair shop had transformed into a software development company, expanding from local clients to national corporations. My mother watched me with concern. "Don't work yourself to death, Lucas," she would say, bringing me dinner at the office. "You need a life beyond this." But I couldn't stop. Maybe a part of me was still seeking validation. Maybe I just wanted to prove that I could build something of my own. 5 years after our transformation, we hit our first million in annual revenue. That's when Laura suddenly became interested in the family business. She quit her prestigious job and came back home. During a family dinner, she made her big announcement. "I think it's time for me to take my place in the company," she said with her usual confidence. "With my business experience, we can take this to the next level." My father practically beamed with joy. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. We need your professional touch around here." I sat there, my fork frozen in midair, trying to process what was happening. The company I had built from the ground up was now being handed to Laura as some kind of inheritance. I swallowed my objections and played along. Laura was named co-CEO, even though she had no experience in our field. My father insisted it was good for the company's image to have someone with her credentials at the helm. So, while I continued handling product development and operations, she took over marketing and investor relations. Over the next 5 years, the business thrived, but so did the tensions. I kept developing new software, building relationships, and improving our services. Meanwhile, Laura became the face of the company. She gave interviews about being a woman in tech, won entrepreneurship awards, and took credit for innovations she had nothing to do with. Our revenue skyrocketed to $50 million, but so did the power struggle. Laura started excluding me from key meetings, making decisions without consulting me, slowly pushing me out of my own company. Then came my father's 60th birthday party, the night that changed everything. The party, of course, was Laura's idea. She rented the most expensive ballroom in the city and invited all our business partners. It wasn't a birthday celebration, it was a networking event in disguise. That was my sister's style. Everything had to serve a purpose. I arrived early to help with preparations, wearing a simple suit. The moment Laura saw me, she gave me that disapproving look I had grown used to. "You couldn't have dressed better?" she whispered. "These people, Lucas?" I ignored her and focused on greeting the guests. Soon, the room filled with executives, investors, and family friends. Laura moved through the room like a politician, shaking hands and flashing her rehearsed smile. As always, I stayed behind the scenes, making sure everything went smoothly. Dinner was served, and just as I was about to take my first bite, Laura tapped her glass to get everyone's attention. I expected a typical speech, maybe a heartfelt tribute to our father or some nostalgic childhood memories. Instead, she dropped a bomb that shattered everything. "As we celebrate Dad's 60th birthday," she began, her voice confident and commanding, "I think it's time to announce some changes at Meltec." My stomach twisted. Changes? "The board has agreed that the company needs unified leadership to move forward," she continued, her words slicing through the room like a blade. "The board? What board meetings?" "For too long, we've been held back by outdated thinking and resistance to change," Laura went on, her eyes locking onto mine. "That's why, effective immediately, I will be assuming the role of sole CEO. It's time for certain elements that no longer contribute to our growth to step aside." A murmur spread through the crowd. I remained still as Laura carried out her corporate execution in front of our entire network. "Some people," she added, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "are better suited for technical roles rather than leadership." She was talking about me. She was humiliating me. "My brother, Lucas, has done an adequate job maintaining our legacy systems," she said, her tone patronizing, "but in today's fast-paced business world, we need vision, excellence. And frankly, Lucas, you simply don't have what it takes at this level." I turned to my father. "Say something. Defend me." But he just sat there, a proud smile on his face. My mother, on the other hand, kept her eyes downcast, her hands trembling slightly on the table. Laura wasn't done. "The truth is," she said, raising her voice for dramatic effect, "Lucas, you are useless in today's business world. Your ideas, outdated, and the lack of formal business education has become a problem. It's time for you to step down with dignity." The silence in the room was suffocating. Hundreds of eyes were on me, waiting for my reaction. I could feel the pity, the judgment, the unspoken agreement with Laura's words. Everything I had built, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, was being ripped away from me in front of everyone. Slowly I stood up. My chair scraped the floor, the sound cutting through the silence like a gunshot. Everyone expected a scandal, perhaps tears, a heated argument. Instead, I simply grabbed my briefcase, walked to my father's desk, and placed a small wrapped package in front of him. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said quietly. Then I turned and left, head held high, leaving behind the whispers, the stares, and the sister who thought she had won that night. I sat in my home office, surrounded by awards and patents that bore my name. Laura thought she had taken everything from me, but she had forgotten one crucial detail, something that would turn her moment of triumph into the biggest mistake of her life. I turned on my laptop and began typing, a small smile appearing on my lips. Tomorrow would be interesting. After all, there are many ways to run a successful business, and in 10 years, I had learned far more than Laura ever did in her fancy business classes. The next morning, the sun rose bright and clear, and with it, everything was about to change. I arrived at the office early, before anyone else, and waited. Exactly at 9 o'clock, Laura walked through the front door with our father by her side, both wearing triumphant smiles. Smiles that were about to disappear. "Lucas," Laura's voice held a mix of surprise and irritation. "What are you doing here? I thought after last night, you'd have the dignity to stay home." I smiled, remembering the email I sent at 3 a.m. to all our top clients, partners, and employees at Myteltech. "Just tying up some loose ends, sister," I replied, "but since you're here, maybe we should talk about the future of the company." "There's nothing to discuss," Dad intervened, his voice firm. Laura is in charge now. The board has already approved it. Oh yes, the board, I said, grabbing my tablet. Let's talk about that. I tapped the screen, and the main monitor in the meeting room lit up with a document. While Laura was busy planning parties and giving interviews, I was actually building this company. And there are a few things you all seem to have forgotten. I displayed another document. I zoomed in for emphasis. First, let me remind you that I own 51% of the shares in Mitel Tech. When we incorporated the company 10 years ago, Dad gave Laura and me equal parts, 25% each, keeping 50% for himself. But 3 years ago, when we needed capital for expansion, he sold me 26% of his shares. Remember that day, Dad? You were too busy attending Laura's award ceremony to handle the negotiations personally, so you signed the papers without reading them properly. The color drained from both of their faces. Laura's perfectly manicured hands gripped the conference table. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Dad never—" "But he signed," I interrupted, displaying another document. "And that's not all." I clicked again, and another screen filled with legal records. The central software that generates 80% of our revenue doesn't belong to Mitel Tech. It belongs to my separate company, Innovat Solutions LLC. Mitel Tech only has a licensing agreement, which expires. I glanced at the clock. In about 10 minutes, Dad collapsed into a chair, realization written all over his face. "The renewal papers," he murmured. "The ones you asked me to sign last week. The ones I didn't read." "Why?" "Because you were too busy helping Laura plan the party, I finished for him." "Yes, those papers. I decided not to send them." Laura's face twisted in anger. "You bastard! Cheater! Watch your words, little sister," I cut her off gently. "Maybe you'll want to hear the rest before finishing that sentence." I clicked again, and a flood of emails appeared on the screen. "While you were busy announcing my graceful exit last night, I was emailing our clients. You see, most of our top clients have personal loyalty clauses in the contracts they signed with Mitel Tech, because of me, my expertise, my history. Last night, I informed them of the leadership changes and my exit." The screen showed dozens of responses from our largest accounts. "Would you like to know how many have triggered the termination clauses in their contracts?" I tilted my head. "Or how many of our top developers, who, by the way, are actually employees of Innovat Solutions, not Mitel Tech, have already accepted positions at my new company?" A deep silence filled the room. Through the glass walls, we could see the employees gathering, whispers spreading as they checked their emails. Laura frantically pulled out her phone, her perfect composure starting to crack as she scrolled the screen. "You can't do this," she stammered. "You mean I can't take back what's mine?" I replied calmly. "You thought you could just take everything because you have an MBA and Dad's approval. You thought you could humiliate me in front of everyone and walk away unscathed." I stood up, adjusting my suit. "So here are your options." I let the weight of my words settle before continuing. Option 1. I leave with my shares, my software, my clients, and my employees. Mitel Tech becomes an empty shell, and you can explain to all those important people you invited last night why the value of the company dropped to zero overnight. My dad's face turned pale. 10 years of work, gone in the last 10 minutes. "And option 2? He asked in a weak voice. "Option 2. You both resign." I took a deep breath and met their stunned expressions with a calm, steady gaze. "I take full control of Mitel Tech. You both keep your shares as silent partners, receiving dividends but with no influence over operations. Laura gets a generous severance package and glowing references for her next job, far, far away from here." Laura's face flushed red. "Interesting. You planned all of this, didn't you? You were just waiting for the right moment to stab us in the back." I let out a short laugh, devoid of humor. "No, Laura. I spent 10 years trying to be a good son, a good brother, and all this time you underestimated me. I built this company from nothing while you took all the credit. For my work, I only planned this." I looked at my watch, about 12 hours after you called me useless in front of everyone we knew. My phone vibrated. Another termination notice. Time was running out. What would be next? It was a whirlwind of appeals and lawyers. By noon, I sat alone in what was now my office, watching the city. The company I built was finally truly mine, but the victory felt empty. Family relationships were in ruins around me, trust shattered like broken glass. That night, my mom came to see me, her eyes red from crying. "Did it have to end this way?" she asked softly. I faced her, my voice gentle but firm. "They left me no choice. They would have taken everything I built and discarded me without a second thought." She sat slowly, understanding but saddened. "And now?" I turned my laptop toward her, showing the plans I had already made, expansions, new products, innovations I had been holding on to. Now I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Now I build something even bigger. But this time, without carrying those people who see me as useless. A year later, under my leadership, my tech tripled in value. Laura got a job at a startup in Silicon Valley, humiliated but, perhaps, wiser. Dad finally retired, understanding that his golden daughter had almost destroyed his legacy. We only saw each other on holidays, keeping a polite distance, masking wounds that might never heal. Sometimes late at night, I look at old family photos and feel a pang of sadness for what we lost. But then I remember that night at the birthday party, the look of disdain on Laura's face, the way Dad agreed with her cruel words, and I recall that in business and in family, respect is earned, not demanded. They learned that lesson too late. My story spread through the corporate world, a cautionary tale about underestimating the wrong person. At industry events, I often hear whispers. "That's Lucas Mitchell." They never finish the sentence. They don't need to. My success speaks for itself. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Laura's business school graduation ceremony. The topic: Hidden Forces, the Power of Underestimated Leaders. I accepted the invitation with a small smile, already planning my speech. After all, I have quite a story to tell. The company continues to thrive under my leadership, but more importantly, I have found peace with my decisions. Sometimes, the strongest message you can send is simply proving they were wrong, and sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying others. It's rising so high that they can't help but see their own mistakes. As I sit here in my office with a view of the city, I remember something my mom once told me: success is the best revenge, but wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start seeking growth. She was right. I've moved past revenge. Today, I focus on building something meaningful, something that will survive the pettiness and family drama. I still have that birthday gift I never gave to my dad, a photo album of the company's journey, from a small repair shop to what it is today. Maybe one day, when the wounds have healed enough, I will finally give it to him. Until then, it remains on my shelf, a silent reminder that our greatest strengths often come from the very things others underestimate in us. Wow, that was a masterstroke. Dad and my sister underestimated the guy for years, thinking they could just discard him, but he showed that talent and dedication speak louder than favoritism. In the end, it wasn't revenge, it was justice. So, what do you think? Does this family still have a chance for redemption? If this story captivated you from start to finish, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Every day, I bring incredible stories like this one. Oh, and there are 2 more unmissable stories right here on the screen waiting for you. Pick one and come with me. I'll be signing off now, and I'll see you in the next story full of twists and turns.